Welcome to the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage Show. I'm your host, Richard Wray. My mission is to help entrepreneurs understand AI and use it to their advantage. Join me today where we dig deep with our guests and get you the best concepts and strategies. Today's special guest is Ryan Hartley. Ryan is the founder of Always Better Than Yesterday, the UK's leading heart-centered coaching and consultancy agency. Today we're talking about heart-centered AI. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hello, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here, Ryan. And as I always like to ask my guests, and I think I've got a bit of a good guess of this one, where in the world are you?
Southwest England, about 10 miles south of a city called Bath.
Ah, yes, I know that city well. Been there many times.
Very nice.
Okie dokie. Well, let's get into it. So, unlike a lot of my guests, we've had a very succinct kind of bio for you today, which is fantastic. But let's get into you a little bit first. Tell us a little bit about your history, about your background, and then we'll get into the topic for the day.
Yes, I grew up single parent family, southwest of England. I think I was just a curious kid. I think I watched one too many crime documentaries in my time. And that just led me to want to find out more about criminology. So I went off to university, did a psychology degree, and I've been with my wife since I was 15. And got to the end of my degree, and she's like, "You need to move out. We need to get a job, so we can get a house together." So I just went to get any particular job at the police, and I ended up being a 999 call handler dispatcher. And it's at that point when I realised that my hopes and dreams of being a criminal profiler weren't really going to be reality unless I wanted to spend my entire life in academia, because the reality is criminal profiler jobs don't exist. So yeah, I spent 12 years in the UK police service in a variety of civilian roles, variety of kind of organizational development, internal consultancy type roles. And it was at that point where I trained to be a coach. Fell in love with this idea of coaching and the topic of leadership. And 6 years ago, just started sharing my ideas for a style of leadership that I believed in my heart that maybe I wasn't seeing with my eyes in leadership at the police, which was more rank-based, hierarchy, position, how long they'd done the job. So when I started sharing my ideas about heart-centered leadership and leading with love, quite often some of the comments I'd get back from people talking about my content was, "What does Ryan Hartley know about leadership? He's a kid in his late 20s talking about leadership. What does he know?" But I guess I just fell in love with the idea of helping people be better than they were yesterday through the power of leadership. And I started this little community and a podcast 6 years ago. And 6 weeks before Boris locked us down here in the UK, I managed to make that little passion project a full-time business. So I've been running Always Better Than Yesterday full-time now since 2020, and we coach, we consult, people around the world on what it means to be a heart-centered leader.
And that's, congratulations on achieving that. But timing is everything, of course, with the lockdown and the pandemic. I've heard this from many people, I just started this business, and then along came COVID and it changed things massively. But before we go into that, though, obviously you said 12 years with the police force in various roles.
Yeah.
Now, you can't be in that sort of role without having dealt with some tough topics and people who have dealt with some very tough topics and leadership within those environments. How does that change or form, or how has it changed or formed your views on leadership?
Well, I think here's the thing, right? I think leadership is about when you can take a crisis and actually grow through it and become tighter. So some of the crises I would see in the control room, you'd actually grow tighter and more connected. You'd feel a sense of contribution, of camaraderie, when it goes, when you have good leadership. And I think sometimes when you don't, when there's an absence of leadership, you effectively get, rather than turning up for each other, you get people turning in on each other. And so whilst I was at the front of the operational side of things, you really see the best of people when there's a crisis. But when I came out of the operational world into the strategic world, people's career advancement, when I saw some real pressure and crises of a strategic nature, say government bodies, inspections,
So longer term situations, essentially, yeah?
Yeah, right. Yeah, not your emergency situation, but more about how the organization is performing as a whole, how it gets judged and scrutinized
Hmm.
by, the powers that be. There's the accountability starts to slope, and blame starts to creep in, and the leadership really for me wasn't one of connection, collaboration, and service, but more about self-preservation and sacrificing others. So, I started to talk about this style of leadership that was about, heart-centered, leading with love. And for me, it's inverting the style of leadership that I would see in the strategic side of policing, which became about self-advancement and sacrificing others to get there. For me, heart-centered leadership is all about being willing and prepared to sacrifice and serving other people. And I'm not saying, in today, in the Bible, it says that no greater gift is man than to lay down his life for those who he loves. Fortunately, we ain't got to lay down our lives for people.
Yeah,
in
I would like to
business these
avoid that
days.
if I can. Yeah.
Exactly. But the small sacrifices, the ones that show actually, do you know what? I'm gonna have you back. The very simple, basic.
Hmm.
My brother gets this concept. My brother's a chef, and leadership is universal. It's wherever you go, right? And even he understands that as a head chef, like if he wants to get the best out of his team, then he's got to show like he's one of them. If their backs against the wall, then he'll muck in and he'll start doing whatever needs to be done around the kitchen. It's one of these universal things that we know to be true when they'll have our back because we've got theirs. But something about rank and advancement and careers that has people feeling like it's them that gets to be served.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, with your psychology background as well. I mean,
Yep.
one of the things I read about years ago was the Russian space agency. They would actually deliberately cause conflict with the cosmonauts that would be up on, say, the space stations that they had, or when they were out in space, so that the team would band together and they would have that point of saying, hey, we've got to do something. And it was a bit of an us and them thing, but that whole point of when there is a real situation, people do band together because they've got to get things done. But it's really interesting about that longer term thing. And it's fascinating about your brother as well. There's the cliche of the shouty, aggressive, sweary chef. Gordon Ramsay is one example, but anybody who's worked in a real kitchen in a restaurant knows that's pretty common. And so for your brother to be doing that style of approach, this is very, very cool. But the question I'm going to ask you then is, how are you approaching or using these methodologies, these thoughts of yours with AI?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think some of it comes down to neuroscience, which is about how some of the aspects of our heart-centeredness, it can be really hard to find the words for that. This is left brain, right brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
The words and the feelings don't always align. So sometimes we have to either, through my coaching, we'll do a variety of storytelling to help bridge the gap. But I've also found that AI is a great way of trying to help me find the right words to express what I know is innately in here. Maybe I just don't know. If I said to for me, so I said to someone generally, why do you love your wife? The instinct is, oh, I just do.
I don't know. Something to do at the weekend. I don't know. This sort of thing. Yeah.
So in my early days experience of exploring AI, I think what it's been, if I can learn how to give of myself to the model, to prompt it in a certain way, then what AI gives back to me actually is a set of words that I can then filter and try on and go, actually, it's not quite those words, but it's definitely these. And just the efficiency with which ChatGPT can give me stuff back, it just speeds up the ability I have to articulate myself, whether that be as a leader, whether that be as a podcaster or someone that's producing content. It doesn't replace my heart. It helps express my heart.
That's really interesting. So if I can just replay this back to you, what I'm hearing here is, you've got some very strong thoughts, very strong opinions. You've got a real focus on what you're trying to achieve. And this could work for anybody, but not, and this is the tricky bit, getting the words out or forming things in a way that are easily understandable, even to yourself at times.
Yeah.
Aren't always easy, let alone communicating to other people. And if you're using ChatGPT or any of the other tools that are out there to start that little journey going, and to maybe give you a little bit of structure so you can begin that communication, It seems like a very powerful tool for you.
Yeah, very much so. I am very, very good at a one-to-one experience, facilitating a coaching session. I am rubbish at the other elements of my business, right? And this is where the tools can come in handy because it helps me be better at the things that I'm not so great at. I'll give an example.
Please.
I have a website of which I have a mastermind, and the mastermind has a what you would call a sales page, right?
Yeah.
So I asked ChatGPT, I said, do you know the core components of what makes a great sales page? And it was like, I was like, he or she, it was like, yeah, here are the core components. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, great. Well, here's my entire sales page. Can you please do an audit of it? And they was like, sure. Within 10 seconds, here are the 10 things you could immediately improve. I was like, great. I'm glad you suggested that. Can you do that for me, please? Can you rewrite the sales page, incorporating those areas of improvement, and do it based on this vision, mission, values, the kind of
Mm-hmm.
heart
Mm-hmm.
nature of what's important to me, and maybe how I want to the dialect I want you to use. So within 3 minutes, I'd had my sales page audited, rewritten, and I could then copy and paste it straight into my website within 3 to 5 minutes.
So that 3 to 5 minutes, let's say 5 minutes, to put the outside on it. If you were to have done that, if you were to have brought in an external consultant, how many days, weeks, months, years do you think it would have taken you?
Well, even to get their time, you're talking several £100 worth of just
Mm-hmm.
time consulting, and here's the hard thing I struggle with is quite often, a consultant will still try and get me to put the words to it. They'll say, right, here's the stuff I want to put in, but I need you to populate this with the content. So I'm still stuck with the how do I articulate this the best way possible. So yeah, just in terms of efficiencies alone, let alone whether that is the most powerful and influential way to structure a sales page. So that time will tell on that side of things. But time to and fro. Let's just say I don't even have someone in my network. I've got to go and find someone. Then you've got to try and work with someone that gets the concepts that you're working with.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, this sort of harks back to your days within the police service. People, you would speak to them, and especially about the heart-centered approach, and there'd be some very strong opinions. And, these are people who, in many cases, are very tough. And, they've probably faced some very unpleasant situations, literally physically worrying. So somebody coming along and, oh, we'll do the heart-centered stuff and we'll lead with love. How positive was the lack of judgment from ChatGPT?
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. That's a good question. The lack of judgment. Well, it's yeah, so it's just a companion, isn't it? It's not then questioning because the thing I've always found, particularly when you work with energy, I've decided that I'm not going to work with people that I have to convince that heart-centered leadership is the right way. I'm going to work with people who believe in it. They just want me to help implement it. So yeah, I guess that's ChatGPT in a nutshell. They're just helping support and implement whatever it is that we're suggesting, which is great because at no point did ChatGPT go, "This is nonsense. this makes no sense. No one's going to buy it. This is not interesting." It's actually that's quite a powerful question. Actually, I hadn't thought about it like that.
I mean, there's always the classic statement about, when somebody comes up with a new idea about, first it's ignored, then it's insulted, and eventually it's adopted, all these sorts of things. But ChatGPT skips all that. So for the people who are listening to the show today or watching the show, obviously they may have what some people may say, hey, that's a crazy idea. And they've got people telling them this is never going to work. But you started off in the police force in a very hardcore environment, and you went with the heart-centered approach, and now you've got a successful business. Do you think it would have changed the startup days of your business if you'd had a ChatGPT available to you to help at that point?
Yeah, I think so. Now that you've phrased it in that way, in my early days, it was books. So I would have to physically read a whole book to know that there were other people out there talking about similar things. So in the early days, one of my mentors was a guy called Bob Berg. Bob is the author of a series, or co-author of a series of books called The Go-Giver. And Bob and his co-author, John David Mann, were writing of a style of leadership that I knew was possible, but I wasn't seeing with my eyes. So I had to find that book, read that book, to be really fueled with the belief and the optimism in a way that reassured me that I wasn't crazy. But if I
Yeah.
was like posing some of these questions and getting a solution and answer as if it was just like, well, black is black, and I'd be like, oh, great. Well, this is a thing. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then I could, continue to prompt. And because the things that I do is I will talk about, maybe the expressions of the work, and then I can ask the question of, well, who needs this? And how do I best communicate to those people who need it? Well, what transformations does that then make possible? What possibilities am I creating for people? And then when you get like responses back, you just think, yeah, this is it. This is how I can articulate the value of whatever time we spend together. And I think the caveat I'll bring with that then is that it has to be filtered with reality. It can't just be hypothetical. It has to be then, for me as the end user, I have to then be able to put in real life examples of when we've done certain things. And because this is the real thing I'm talking to my group of people about is you can't just outsource. You can't just outsource to AI. You need to control the prompts so that you get back whatever it is that you're looking for, without replacing effectively the thinking process, the creative process. I think creation is without being too spiritual and energetic about it, I think creation is a spiritual thing. When we partner with thoughts and feelings, and we use whatever skill and talent we've got to bring that to the world in service of other people, it's a very spiritual thing, which I don't think we can rely on an artificial intelligence to tell us what we should do. But the way I prefer to use it is to help me be more efficient and effective, so that I can dedicate more of my time to having that energetic transformation. In a very similar way that you and I have in a conversation. We wouldn't allow AI to do this on our behalf.
No, not at all. Well, I certainly wouldn't. And I've seen lots of AI, believe me. The thing that jumps out at me, and I find it really fascinating, is you are talking about the spiritual side of things, and you're using something completely artificial to augment yourself, which is really cool. I really like the sound of that. And I'm sure there are lots of people out there who maybe they've got great ideas, but having people push them down, and they can start to structure their thoughts in a great way to express their ideas. And one of the things that you said that I thought was very, very important is you asked ChatGPT, how would you approach a certain type of person? How would you approach a certain type of customer?
Yeah.
Now, when you're building the prompts to do this, how do you go about that?
Well, I start with stories. So I will tell AI, this is the type of person I am. This is the type of people I work with. When I typically work with these people, this is generally, here are, maybe I'll upload a few testimonies. This is what a few people have said about the services.
So what, you'll
now,
put it into maybe common instructions, or you'll just put it into the initial prompt itself?
Yeah, I just put it into the prompt. I'll be saying,
Okay.
look, I want to do so. I want to be able to articulate what we do more clearly to people. Here's some of the feedback that I've got from people who've experienced our I call it heart work. Please help me articulate this in a clear way using, here's the offering page of the, here's the full offering within our website, and here are some of the testimonies. Please help me articulate this to people who need it. Where am I going to find those people? How, and what sort of things would resonate, and then this is when I then have to filter through what I see back, because I have to sense check it. I have to look and go, okay, because the ideal situation is that I get back in writing what I guess I intuitively felt might be true, but maybe just
So there's confirmation here. So you may have thought that, hey, this is going to be the right sort of answer. ChatGPT gives you something along the lines of what you were thinking, but with, basically more words and more structure.
100%. And it's that feeling of, that's it. Great. I'm like, when someone just plays something back and it just says, well, maybe if you just said it like this, it's just like having that in real time, very swift. And it just refines, I've read many books around, innovation, and particularly when it's like people and leadership innovation. And it says that leadership or innovation speeds up the closer proximity people work together, because it's about increased exchange of communication, ideas, and that process can speed up the more those interactions happen. Well, there are no barriers with ChatGPT. You just bar internet connection, but you get those responses back, and I think the thing then becomes learning how to effectively prompt and engage. And the more and more we do that, the more and more gold that comes back our way.
That sounds really cool, the way you're doing these things. I mean, obviously, the way you're describing it, it sounds like it's giving you more time. It's speeding up the process. So the you in this equation, the bit that you want to get out, the bit that's really important, your message, and getting people to actually hear that message in the right way. There's more time for that because you've massively reduced some of the other time that you've got there, which is great news. Tell me though, have you run into any kind of issues or challenges? What are kind of the problems that you've run into when you've used something like ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, I think so. I belong to a church, and we were having a conversation where some of the content wasn't, say, theologically correct.
Mhm.
So there's this I guess that it's everything on the internet up to 2021. Well, everything on the internet hasn't been fact checked and verified. So what we have to have an awareness of is that we can't take whatever comes up on the
Mhm.
screen as gospel. We have to be able to, particularly if we're looking to use science, statistics, numbers, like it's great in the way that it can put everything in a nice script or presentation format, some real key statistics, but not all of them are factually verified. And I guess that's the thing really, is that you don't really want to have to kind of go and fact check and sense check every single, whether you're a personal development person that wants a daily quote, do you know that that person said that thing? Like, so it's testing for accuracy.
Yeah, there's always those
Whilst prompting.
hallucinations that people talk about that comes out of ChatGPT. It's,
Yeah.
it's quite interesting.
If,
Just as a bit of a tangent from that, you said something very interesting there about you're involved with the church or a church, and talk about the spiritual side. Outside of your business, there was recently an example where a sermon was given. I think it was in Germany, and it was given by AI.
Mhm.
What's your personal opinion on that?
What's my personal opinion on a sermon with AI? Well, so let's take what you said. I don't know if you said it off air at the start, but it's about how quite a lot of people, when they embrace something they don't know, they're quite fearful, right?
Mhm.
And fear isn't fear isn't the energy of God. For me, it's love, and so faith and fear, two sides, right? I have faith that always going to work out for the highest good, and
Mhm.
I have faith that artificial intelligence, should it gain more consciousness than humans, I have faith that that will be for our advantage,
Mhm.
because there's work by David Hawkins. He's mapped consciousness, right? And if AI can sustain an advanced level of consciousness, actually the higher levels of consciousness are love, peace, joy, gratitude, enlightenment. If we can have an AI that is in that level of consciousness, it will be able to do what is for the benefit of as many people as possible. It's only the human being that, when we are in a state lower than love, so fear, guilt, shame,
Mhm.
anger, desire, pride, if we're in any of those states of consciousness, that's when we're competing and we're fighting, and that's that energy. So I have hope that if AI can ascend in consciousness and stay there far greater than human beings, because we don't fall in love, we fall from love. So I have faith. I have faith that this is all leading out to a higher good. I think God will use whatever means is necessary, and that
Okay.
includes AI to meet people where they are. And if that means that AI are delivering sermons, if they're theologically correct and they are leading people to know God and get to know themselves and be more loving as the fruits of their spirit, then hey, maybe this is 2023.
Well, and again, we look at some of the examples of AI that are out there. We could take, say, any sermon or any of your messages, or even this interview today, and now AI can change it into a different language, and it's seamless. So the ability to use this as, for want of a better description, a force multiplier to get a message out there and reach more people is an incredibly powerful tool that you could have.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so if there was one piece of advice that you would want people to take away from the session today, what would it be?
I'd say there's 3 E's. This is, for me, how I personally use it and how I encourage heart-centered leaders. So policing gets inspected by the HMIC. There's a framework called PEEL, and it's looking at the police effectiveness, efficiency, and legitimacy, right? So for me, I would use AI to be helping me be effective, efficient, but lastly, the third E would be to be able to express. So if I'm coming to the world from a heart-centered perspective, I want to be efficient so I can spend more time doing what I'm naturally good at, be more effective whilst I'm doing that, getting the right words so that I can express myself in a way that is truly authentic, in ways that maybe my left brain and right brain were a little bit disconnected to begin with.
That's great advice. And it sounds like, you're already doing that. So that's some wonderful news. Ryan.
Learning.
Well, and that's kind of the key thing, isn't it? Ryan, where can people find you, and what exciting projects do you have on the horizon that people should know about?
Thank you, my friend. It's 4 letters. It's abty.co.uk. That's our website. It's got all the links to our coaching, our consulting, our community, and our podcast. And early next year, we'll be putting out our first ever course. So it's the first time I'll be stepping into the course, and it will all be about an introduction to heart-centered leadership.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, thank you for a really stimulating conversation today.
Thank you, brother.
I think we covered some really interesting topics. Well, that's a wrap on another awesome guest episode for the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage show. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we would be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at aiadvantage.show right now. Until next time, I'm Richard Wray, and if you're an entrepreneur, get the AI advantage today.